I have a handful of longer form videos scripted out and have one getting really close to being finished that I was going to record this weekend, but my throat is all screwed up right now and I did not want to record 15 to 20 pages of voiceover with swollen tonsils and a sore throat. I decided to do something a little shorter and something I've been wanting to do for a while anyway, so here's a review of the video game North. My friend Graham always has really interesting recommendations for art that I should check out, whether it be games or movies or whatever. He gave me a copy of North for the Nintendo Switch, and he didn't say much apart from calling it a weird art game and warning me of a potential game-breaking bug. But he also told me the game was around an hour long, so I just went for it, rather than worrying about the bug, which I didn't end up running into, but should be taken into consideration as something to try to avoid for anyone who buys North. It isn't a spoiler or anything to say that North is a game that is intended to portray the experience of being a refugee. There's a Nintendo Life review for the game that ends, North is not a video game per se, at least not in the traditional sense. It is an interactive piece of electronic art one can choose to indulge in order to better understand the plight of refugees. As such, the messages might escape those who are too young to understand the real-life parallels or those who are too old and with prejudice to care. If you like cyberpunk science fiction and don't mind experiencing simulated oppression, give this a shot. There is certainly nothing quite like it on the eShop. For the asking price and a mere moment of your time, will give you modern society conundrums that will haunt you for years. The experience is so subjective, we have no choice but to leave the score for each individual to settle on their own. The biggest tragedy here is not that number on the bottom of the review, but the fact that if this interactive art piece was released 100 years in the past or a century in the future, the lingering topics would, and will surely still be, completely irrelevant. And then after all that, the review gives the game 5 stars out of 10 stars. I don't know how you can experience something that will haunt you for years, then give it a 5. Admittedly, there are a lot of issues with how it plays. Much of the story is told, and hints for progressing are given via letters that you have to stop playing and backtrack to send. The gameplay element is largely clunky and awkward, and on top of that, my engagement with North would grind to a halt when I had to backtrack, find a mailbox, mail my letter, and read a page of text explaining the story to me. It's the same big issue I had with Gone Home. I don't play a game to sit and read something. I love text-based games, and I don't have a problem with text and interactive storytelling. Not at all. But North's world was eerie and surreal and visually interesting, and I wanted to explore it and learn through the world, not through letters I had to read. So the interaction that you can have with the world of North is at times inhibited by an obviously limited budget and a lack of emphasis on integrating story and gameplay. When the game gets more painful and more surreal, however, and when it relies on creativity and atmosphere rather than text to express what it feels like to arrive in a strange and unkind city as a refugee, it excels. It's one thing if someone didn't like or click with this game at all. That's understandable. Games are subjective. But I don't understand how you can enjoy and appreciate this element of North and then be like, yeah, 5 out of 10, sorry. When I talked to Graham about North, he said that although games are usually compared to movies, North felt more like an art exhibit or museum to him, and he compared video games to sculpture. The game reminded me of museums while I played it as well. There are specific scenes that reminded me of the Museum of Jurassic Technology, which as a fake museum is tonally a much less serious place than North is as a piece of art, but I enjoyed the aesthetic similarities anyway. And as someone who loves museums and loves games, it's neat to consider comparing games to art I wouldn't have previously thought to compare them to, like sculpture. I also really like some of the game's locations and short segments and enjoyed the ending in particular. I don't want to show or say more because I don't want to spoil such a short experience. Graham paid $3 so I could play it on the Switch. You can get it for pay what you want on itch.io. On itch, at least, it states that for $3 purchases, half of payments go to Refugees on Rails and Refugee Openware, which is cool. I'm not really sure what's going on with North's developers, Outlands. It seems like the Twitter account linked to them doesn't exist and their Patreon has 0 patrons. It's a shame, because with more time and money, I do think that they could make something really cool. I do intend to check out their other games, especially because they haven't made all that many. I grew up playing free Flash games, including avant-garde games, and games developers tried to imbue with some sort of deeper thematic meaning. And I also used to play a lot of small freeware art games on my old laptop. It was very surreal to play North on the Switch because it felt like some neat freeware game I would have played a few years ago rather than a game on a Nintendo console. There are a lot of Steam user reviews that call North unique and interesting, but slam it for the gameplay aspect. I can agree that it was frustrating, but there's a tendency in certain audiences to get upset when a game doesn't fit the exact parameters of what they believe a game should be. And I have played some art games or read some books or seen some movies that were trying to be about something and came off preachy and clunky and boring. I don't think that embodying a certain ideology should shield a piece of art from criticism. But as someone who is very far removed from the refugee experience, and as someone who enjoys experimental games, North was valuable to me. There are some visuals and some moments in North that were tremendously affecting, even if other parts of my hour playthrough were frustrating or felt repetitive. And $3, or alternatively, free, is a pretty cheap cost for a game that can have that kind of impact on you. Thanks for watching! I'm still trying to figure out shorter form reviews and essays that I'm happy with in between longer videos, so if there are other smaller recent art games you'd like me to check out and review, let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Patrons just got an 8-minute preview for the next parasocial essay that I've been working a whole lot on, so if you are a backer or if you want to be a backer, you have access to that now. Hopefully that video will come out later this month. That's the one I was talking about. It's currently like 18 pages. It's very long. This is about 2 pages. Anyway, thanks!